Okay. Woo! And welcome to Refuge Recovery, section number 19. Now, where we left off yesterday in Noah Levine's Refuge Recovery was page 97. And so from there we shall continue. Let's see. Bringing awareness to the feeling tone in this moment allows us to relax and release the aversion. Our habitual tendency when there is discomfort is to push it away. But the aversion to the discomfort seems to make it grow bigger. Now, if you have enough experience, you know that that's absolutely true. Anything you resist will persist, is another way of putting it. And pretty soon we begin squirming around, or we feel that we have to run out of the room because sitting still is a pain in the ass. Awareness of the desire for things to be other than the way they are is key. Thus, the first step in breaking the addiction is acknowledging the unsatisfactory nature of both pleasure and pain. We do this by being vigilant towards and aware of the presence of dissatisfaction, the desire for things to be different. Yet we also need to pay attention to moments of ease and well-being, the experience of non-attachment, when the mind is free from suffering. Free from suffering. We are usually hypervigilant when something is uncomfortable, yet when it is pleasurable or peaceful, we often pay no attention, except perhaps to think about how we are going to get more of that pleasure. True. Awareness of the lack of satisfaction and of the craving for things to be different allows us to take the next step towards freedom. I'm going to say that again. Awareness of the lack of satisfaction and of the craving for things to be different allows us to take the next step towards freedom. We can relax the clinging of the mind and the body and simply accept that we feel a craving for more or less of something. We can ask ourselves, can I accept this one moment at a time? Can I acknowledge that this is the way it is? And though I want things to be different, can I let go of that aversion and let things be the way they are? Have you ever really taken the time to ask that in the moment of suffering or pleasure and wanting more of pleasure? These are important questions. This is how we live in the now. This is how we become stable, no matter what's going on around us. It is important to acknowledge this process as it unfolds by investigating it and acknowledging our feelings of craving. Like what they keep mentioning here, which needs to be understood, is that there's nothing wrong with craving. There's nothing wrong with pleasure. There's nothing wrong with suffering. It's just what is. And if we don't get attached to anything in particular, we can ebb and flow. Let's see. It is important to acknowledge this process as it unfolds. But what does that mean, Jeannette? We can ebb and flow. It means we can enjoy life. It means that we don't get heartbroken or disappointed or angry. We become more observers than anything else. And we practice the practice of gratitude, of being in that ebb and flow and being able to have enough bandwidth to look at the things that you're grateful for. And you can look at the things that may be uncomfortable too, but you don't attach to them. You can observe them and you can give compassion, not pity, not resentment. You can give compassion. And hold that thought because I want to read you something. I've read this before, but I'll read it again. What do I mean by compassion? Usually, our concept of compassion or love refers to the feeling of closeness we have with our friends and our loved ones. Sometimes compassion also carries a sense of pity. This is wrong. Any love or compassion which entails looking down on the other is not genuine compassion. To be genuine, compassion must be based on the respect for the other. The respect for the other. And on the realization that others have the right to be happy and overcome suffering just as much as you. On this basis, since you can see that others are suffering, you develop a genuine sense of concern for them. The Dalai Lama said that. But back to this. It is important to acknowledge this process as it unfolds by investigating it and acknowledging that our feelings of craving, our conditioned tendency is to push or pull or grasp or run. Which one are you? Are you a pusher? Are you a puller? Are you a grasper? Or are you a runner? These are important things to know about yourself. The practice of refuge recovery calls us to the practice of letting go or letting be. That should be on a bumper sticker. Let go or let be. From the awareness of grasping or aversion comes the possibility of letting go. With the trained mind, we can release our mental or physical grip, because all things that have arisen will pass. This too shall pass. You've heard that one. That act of letting go will allow the experience to pass. Letting be is similar to letting go. It means letting the experience and all the feelings it engenders be present the way that it is, accepting the experience as unsatisfactory, impertinent, or impersonal. In the early stages of recovery, we may find that we are not so good at internally just letting things go or letting ourselves be. Amen. But with time, we will become able to tolerate unpleasantness without externalizing it and acting on it. That leads to a peaceful life, a happy life. For example, we won't have to say the angry words. We may still experience the anger or the fear, but we gain the ability to pause and respond with compassion rather than react with angst. Oh, can you imagine the drama you'll save yourself? The drama I could save myself. The drama I'm learning to save myself. Hey. The Buddha suggests that once we have acknowledged our clinging or our aversion, if we can't easily let it go, we should try to redirect our attention to something else. There's a simple step out of drama. To another place in the body that is not painful. For example, during meditation, if there is pain in your left knee and you feel the aversion to it but can't accept or tolerate it, redirect your attention somewhere else. Try, for example, bringing the attention back to your breath. Another level of our practice that addresses craving is inquiry. We can investigate what is going on. What is underneath this desire, more or less? What is motivating or fueling this aversion? Why is this thought pattern being played over and over again? You've been there. We've all been there. Having to stop. And I have put this into practice where my mind will get into this rat tail spin and I'm just like, why? Because it makes you feel insane. So you have to stop and go, I don't want to feel this, first of all. Second of all, recognize you're feeling it. Recognize where you're feeling it. And then either learn the sacred art of falling into it so it's released. What does that mean? In my experience, it means you feel it and then you ask it questions like, why? Where did this come from? Why is this pain or emotional tone happening in my stomach? And then you start talking to it, and then somehow, I've experienced it myself, you kind of just like go, oh, and fall into it, and it's overwhelming for a few seconds, and then it's like smoke in the mist. It just elevates and you're like out of it. It's fabulous. But it also, Well, let's see what they have to say instead of throwing all my own 2 cents in. What is underneath this desire, more or less? What is motivating or fueling this aversion? Like, where did this come from, right? Is it a childhood wound? Is it an old trauma? Is it knee-jerk reaction because of the first time you experienced this emotion? Why is this thought pattern being played over and over again? When we really start to investigate our aversion, anger, or lust, we almost always find, throw that one in, why don't you? When we really start to investigate our aversion, anger, or lust, we almost always find what is fueling it underneath is fear. That's interesting. Lust comes from fear. That's a new one. A base level fear that we are not going to get what we want or are going to lose what we have. That's interesting. That's something to meditate on. That's a little confusing to me. But anyway, sometimes it even manifests as a fear that we won't be able to tolerate the fear. Okay. Underneath our ego and anger and lust is often the insecurity of fear, which we find when we investigate. Once we recognize it as fear, we can reflect on the fact that fear is not an excuse for inaction. Well, how does that play out if you're talking about anger, lust, or aversion to it? Ego. Once we recognize it as fear, we can reflect on the fact that fear is not an excuse for inaction. We can then take the next breath or other action and learn to live with fear as a constant companion. Make a friend of your enemy, in other words, so it doesn't overwhelm you. You kind of invite it next to you and go, all right, I see you. What's up? I respect you, but you're not going to be able to control me. All right, I get it. If we live our lives taking action only when fear is not at play, we would do very little. We certainly never would have started meditating in the first place. Almost every time we do something new, some fear arises. Well, that fear, I imagine, investigating my own idea of what fear is, would have to do something to do with change. Having to change your paradigm of way of thinking, or your nutrition, or anything that you're actually accustomed to having be your norm. Change can be fearful, because change means, well, you're changing. Make it be for something better. Your better version of yourself. Almost every time we do something new, some fear arises. Let's see. Okay, let's just go back. Underneath our ego and anger and lust is often the insecurity of fear, which we find when we investigate. Once we recognize it as fear, we can reflect on the fact that fear is not an excuse for inaction. We can then take the next breath or other action and learn to live with fear as a constant companion. If we lived our lives taking action only when fear was not at play, we would do very little. We certainly never would have started meditating in the first place. Almost every time we do something new, some fear arises, but it is not a problem, just an old and familiar companion. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. In fact, for recovering addicts, the wisdom of insecurity becomes one of our greatest teachers. Another level of inquiry is to look closely. What does that mean? From what I understand, the wisdom of insecurity becomes one of our greatest teachers. Well, if we recognize any thought pattern that we thought we knew what it was, it's kind of like when you're reading something, or you're even trying to write and you try to use a word that you think you know what it means, or when you read something and you think you know what it says. I often would look words up in the dictionary. Something in my gut would say, why don't you go ahead and look that word up? And every time I did, almost every time, I would either inadvertently A, get more information, or B, realize that I did not know what that word meant. So if insecurity comes up, and we recognize insecurity as something that comes up in us from old behavior patterns or thought patterns that we didn't have control over. So in other words, we were instructed, whether by life or others or our own mishaps, that an insecurity would come up during certain situations, and it just became our pattern whenever we approached similar situations. Well, if we're aware of that, we can go, oh, I feel insecurity. Well, what do I know about what arises insecurity in me from my investigation into me, myself, and I? Then you can go, oh, well, that's just an old pattern that makes me feel insecure, but really there's no reason to be insecure because that insecurity is a choice, and I don't choose to be insecure anymore. Makes sense? I hope so. So, the wisdom of insecurity becomes one of our greatest teachers. Another level of inquiry is to look closely at our mind to see who is experiencing this fear. Hi, kitty. Whose fear is this? Is it mine? Sometimes it becomes clear that the voices of fear are not even our own. Tool that I've often expressed in this channel, I'm going to express again. It's from Access Consciousness. When you feel something in your gut or in your, if you're empathic especially, and you walk into a room and all of a sudden you're feeling anxiety, and before you walked in the room you didn't feel that, or you're kicking it in your room and you're minding your own business, but all of a sudden the neighbor upstairs is having a hell of a day and they just came home, and all of a sudden you feel a little like, ooh, uneasy. A great tool is to say, who does this belong to? Is this mine, someone else's, or something else's? And you repeat that a few times, 2-3 times. And as you do, you may find that when you say someone else's, your kind of gut and your system kind of goes, releases. Oh, it's not mine, it was somebody else's. Well, it's the same in your beliefs about yourself or the world around you. Sometimes we gather beliefs from our parents or from our teachers or coworkers or whatever heroes we have, or bullies even, from other people other than yourself, and you bought it as true. You bought it as a belief. You bought it as a fact in your world, in the way you see the people around you or the situations around you. Well, it works for that too. You can say, is this mine, or did I buy this? Do I really have to believe this in this? Like racism, for example. There's a point where you may have had racist parents, but then when you get to a certain age, you're like, wait a minute, do I have to? Yeah, that's not even mine. I don't have to be like that. That's not how I believe. You stop and think about it, and you make a new decision for yourself, because it's your choice how to lead your life. And so I believe that's what they're talking about here. Let's see, awareness of the desire. Yeah. Sometimes it becomes clear that the voices of fear are not even our own. We are hearing our parents, teachers, friends, or enemies, as I was saying. We have incorporated those voices into our psyche and have believed them our whole lives, thinking that the feelings and thoughts of fear were somehow personal. Oh, it's shocking at first when you start recognizing these things are not yours, but it's so liberating and empowering when you realize, well, now I can make my own damn mind. On a deeper level, we investigate who is really experiencing all these cravings. It's really just the mind, isn't it? ? Just more impertinent thoughts arising and passing. If neither letting go nor investigating works, another skillful way to address craving is to attempt to replace it by actively reflecting on love, courage, and kindness. Love, courage, and kindness. The third avenue of if letting go or just letting be doesn't work, transmute that energy with love, courage, and compassion and kindness. Kindness, courage, love, or compassionate ideas. Transmute that energy into those. Infuse them with those words and what those words positively mean to you. Since negative mind states are still just mind states, we can try to replace them with positive mind states. The loving kindness meditation practice, see the example on page 214, is designed for this. And let's go to 214. Oh, we're going to go ahead and go to 214 and do the loving kindness meditation. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and finish this chapter here and then get back on and do the loving kindness meditation as its own meditation, so that we can have that separate, because I love making these meditation part videos. I'm going to start doing them separately so that they're available for you if you so need them. Because I've been working on these meditations, the forgiveness meditation every day and then alternating, and it's been lovely. And you can do so yourself. You can look up Refuge Recovery on the internet and put meditations next to it. And they have audios that are totally free to download. Let's see. So the loving kindness meditation practice, see the example on page 214, is designed for this. Becoming aware of what we are addicted to and becoming committed to getting free from our misidentification with and addictions to our minds, thoughts, and feelings require a level of renunciation, a level of being honest with ourselves and realizing that we keep doing the same thing over and over and the outcome is unsatisfactory every time. Life doesn't have to be difficult. We make it difficult. Let's make it easy, shall we? Part of our work in recovery is to break the denial of believing that things are going to be different this time, and then beginning to change our inner and outer actions. Here's a simple story that points to the process by which these changes are often made. It takes place in 5 phrases or chapters. 1. We are walking down the street and we fall down a hole. Oh, I've heard this one. We don't know what happened, and it takes us a long time to get out of that hole. 2. The next time we walk down the same street, we know that there is a hole there, but we are still attracted to it. And we get curious, and we fall in again. But this time, it takes us less time to get out. God, this sounds like most of my relationships. Number 3, the next time, you gotta laugh. 3, the next time we walk down the same street, we know that there's a hole there, but we are pretty sure we can jump over it. We try to jump over it, but we fall in again. School of hard knocks right there. Number 4, the next time we walk down the same street, we know the danger, but we're still curious. Oh God! So we walk up to the hole and look in, thinking, "Damn, that's a deep hole." But this time, we don't fall into it. This time, we carefully walk around it. 5. Finally, we choose to walk down a different street. Woohoo! Deciding that we won't walk down that old street anymore because we know that there's a hole there. On the path of recovery, on the path of recovery, we need to have that fifth level of renunciation. Maybe you can picture your hand going, "Stop! Dummy, stop." No, don't call yourself dummy, and don't hit yourself in the forehead when you have a ring on. On the path of recovery, we need to have that 5th level of renunciation. A commitment that we are not going to walk down the street of intoxication and indulgence anymore. Of course, it isn't so simple. Our habits and grasping are so deep. But it all starts with the intention to change, to find new ways of relating to our mind and then the world. All this points towards breaking the addiction to pleasure and the aversion to pain. Don't be scared of either one. We each have to ask ourselves, what do I really want in my life? Short-term satisfaction of craving or long-term peace of mind and the healing of the heart that will lead to a full recovery of my true nature. When we choose the path of wanting long-term peace, freedom, and true happiness in our lives rather than the short-term satisfaction of pleasure and desire, then the effort to train the mind is there. Powerful words here. Hope you heard them. I'm going to say it again. When we choose a path of wanting long-term peace, freedom, and true happiness in our lives rather than the short-term satisfaction of pleasure and desire, then the effort to train the mind is there. Oh, this is really funny today. Why is it funny? None of your business. This has been our experience. when we really keep in the forefront of our thoughts that our intention in this life is to recover and be free, then being of service, practicing meditation, and doing what we need to do to get free becomes the only rational decision. This takes discipline, effort, and it takes a deep commitment. It takes a form of rebellion. Oh, come on, addicts, raise your hand. We've been rebels. I've been a rebel. Do we regret it? Probably not. I don't, but don't want that anymore. Do you? This takes discipline, effort, and deep commitment. It takes a form of rebellion, both inwardly and outwardly. Well, there's a whole new concept of the word rebellion, the way they're stating it here, isn't it? Before I was rebelling against pain and wanting pleasure, or nothing but pleasure. The way they're saying it here is to rebel against all those things that keep you from peace. It's a rebellion worth getting behind. This takes discipline, effort, and deep commitment. It takes a form of rebellion, both inwardly and outwardly. Breaking those habits, and making new ones. Because we do not only subvert our own conditioning, we also walk a path that is totally countercultural. The status quo in our world is to be attached to pleasure and to avoid all unpleasant experiences. Our path leads upstream against the normal human confusions and sufferings. The commitment to this path of recovery will take stamina, steadfastness, and perseverance are a necessity if we are to continue on a long-term spiritual path. Now, Miss Apple, oh my gosh, I totally blanked your name. Jennifer Apple, no! I feel like a jerk now. It's too late, I'm not redoing this video. But lovely lady with the last name Apple, you know I know you and love you. I just blitzed the name right now because I'm thinking of a lot of different things right now. Primarily, I was thinking about your comment yesterday in regards to wanting me to share more about my experience of becoming more nutritionally and physically fit and minded. And I will do so. And I've been thinking about that throughout the day. And I think I'd like to thank you for bringing that up because I needed to hear that. I needed that challenge. This is one of the beautiful things about making these videos and having this channel is that it motivates me to stay on the right path too. So, you know, we're right here on this book. So we're past halfway through. Almost. So I'm going to go. See, part 2 starts tomorrow. Yay! So we're literally halfway through this book. And once I finish this book, that'll give me a couple more weeks of training and getting myself into the habit of literally making yoga and nutrition a new part of my lifestyle. So by the time I do that, I think I'll feel a lot more comfortable when we get through this book. I'll feel a lot more comfortable being able to get on here and tell you how's it going. Because yeah, it is difficult. It does take commitment and it is necessary. And it is opening up my paradigms of how I've lived for the last 40 years. So thank you for that suggestion and I will take it absolutely on. So there you go. The next couple of weeks we'll start that. How to get healthy with Siri. Let's see. The commitment to this path of recovery will take stamina. Steadfastness and a perseverance are a necessity if we are to continue on a long-term spiritual path. We wish we could say that there's some magical secret to all of this. That this or that is what it takes to persevere. But we have no easy solution. I'm going to add a little tidbit here. The reason I went on this 2-week hiatus previously was because I was attempting to use a sacred medicine called Abigaine. It didn't work out. Nothing against the medicine. The medicine is, I've seen it work. It's incredible. My body just rejected it. And then I tried it a different way and it didn't work. So, hey, Kina. One of my housemates said, Jeannette, maybe it's good that it didn't work, because maybe you were putting it too much into being some sort of magic bullet. Father works in mysterious ways. I think she was right. But anyway, perhaps it is as simple as courage. But I want I began to, quote unquote, magically do some massive change in my brain? Or will it be able to be more sustained and a lot more my new way of being if I have the courage and the stamina and the perseverance, which I do, to just actively make all these nutritional and physical and continue with the meditation and the spiritual? I think that's the way to go. There's no simple path. It's these things that they're speaking about here. It's practice, it's perseverance, it's commitment. You gotta wanna, as Cheech and Chong would say. Perhaps it is as simple as courage. The courage to begin, to continue, and to complete the task we took birth for. Wow. No pressure. Yet fear is and has been, and perhaps always will be, our constant companion on the path of recovery. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is in the willingness to act in spite of being afraid. Freeing yourself from the addiction to your mind is like going off into the wilderness to a place you've never been before. It makes perfect sense that we want to stay attached to our sufferings because it is so familiar. What we most fear is not darkness. We know the darkness all too well. What we are most afraid of is the light. That reminds me of a quote about not making your light small, but to let it shine. The light of freedom shines from the unknown, undiscovered truths of compassion, kindness, appreciation, forgiveness, and the wisdom to respond with care and understanding to all beings. But like any arduous journey that feels like it will never end, the path of recovery has both rewards and a destination. Along the way, as we face our fears and confusion, we begin to realize that the process is perfectly safe and well worth the effort to persevere. The closer we get, the less scary it becomes. And when we make it through the dense forest, we can enjoy the views from the higher elevation on the path. Beautiful. Beautiful! I love it! Alright, guys. And I'll come back later this afternoon with the loving kindness meditation. Hasta luego. Namaste.